Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. God has given us unlimited treasures in His Word. Every time we open it, we can discover a new treasure or admire an old one. What will we find today? Here's Carla Earley with Treasure Hunt in the Word.
Hello, my wonderful podcast listeners. I hope you had a great time counting your blessings and thanking God for them yesterday. Today, as you eat your Thanksgiving leftovers, we have a special treat for you, a podcast by my husband, Scott. He usually works in the background, giving me encouragement and ideas, as well as editing each podcast before I record it. Also, he is an incredible Bible teacher, and I learn from him constantly. Here's what God has been teaching him about leftovers.
On this day after Thanksgiving, it seems appropriate to talk about leftovers. The biblical idea of a remnant is interesting to me. I recently came across this word during a study of Jeremiah, and the idea piqued my interest. It's not a word that's used much in modern society unless you are a quilter or seamstress looking for a remnant shop, but the idea still lives on in modern words such as leftovers and scraps. These words tend to signify a less than ideal situation, but I believe that the biblical usage of remnant can reflect a very positive image. Let me explain. As I was studying through Jeremiah and thinking about the tens of thousands of Israelites that had been taken captive, such as Daniel and Ezekiel, my attention was drawn to those that were left behind, the remnant. 2 Kings 25:11-12 describes what happened during the fall of Jerusalem in 586 BC. It states, "And the rest of the people who were left in the city, and the deserters who had deserted to the king of Babylon, were carried into exile. But the captain of the guard left some of the poorest of the land to be vine dressers and plowmen." That's not a very flattering description of those left behind, is it? But here is where I believe the biblical idea of a remnant really shines. 2 Kings 19:31 states, "For out of Jerusalem shall go a remnant, and out of Mount Zion a band of survivors. The zeal of the Lord will do this." Ezra 9:8 states, "But now for a brief moment favor has been shown by the Lord our God to leave us a remnant and to give us a secure hold within His holy place." Reading these passages, I realized that God was going to bless and use the remnant for good. Does the idea of a remnant remind you of other Old Testament passages and ideas? For me, two passages came to mind. The first was Deuteronomy 24:19 that states, "When you reap your harvest in your field and forget a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be for the sojourner, the fatherless, and the widow, that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands." And the second passage was Ruth 2, verse 2-3 that states, "And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him in whose sight I shall find favor. So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz." The idea behind these two passages is that the harvesters should leave some of their harvest for those that are less fortunate, and we see that benefiting people like Ruth. So how does this relate to Israel and to you and I? First, I view the Assyrians and the Babylonians as the harvesters that took what they thought was the best of the best in Israel and Judah. Second, I view those that were left behind, the remnants, as not wanted by the world. But as we see in 2 Kings 19:31 and in Ezra 9:8 and other places in the Bible, the remnant is useful to God. God cherishes those that are left behind, those that the world thinks are not useful or are not the best and the brightest. Hear what Paul states in 1 Corinthians 1:26-27. "For consider your calling, brothers. Not many of you were wise according to the worldly standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong." Do you feel like part of the world's leftovers? Has the world determined that you are not smart enough or rich enough or attractive enough for their standards? Rejoice! God has chosen to use you for His glory. You are a prized possession of the Lord. 2 Kings 19:30 states, "And the surviving remnant of the house of Judah shall again take root downward and bear fruit upward." This idea is reflected in 1 Peter 2:9 that states, "But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light." Rejoice in being part of the world's leftovers, because you are a prized possession of the Lord Almighty.
Thank you for sharing that, Scott. I definitely have felt like a leftover in the eyes of the world, but it's incredibly encouraging to know that because God has chosen us, we are highly prized by Him.
You can contact us at treasurehuntintheword@gmail.com. We'd love to hear the treasures God has given you through His Word. You can listen to other episodes at our website, which you can find in the description below. Thanks for listening, and remember, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.